I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I'm 20 years old and currently a junior at Vassar College. But this isn't where I started. Where I started was at my first school. And in my first school, things were really difficult for me because I had 3 LDs, 3 learning differences, and I didn't even know I had them. So a little bit about my 3 learning differences. Um, it's kind of like my brain playing tricks on me. That's how I like to describe it. And they all like to get in on the tricks. So the first one is dyslexia. And how dyslexia works is it changes a word like chief to chef. So when I'm reading, I can see a word, and I know the word is chief. But from when I see that word, recognize that word, and say that word, it has changed to chief. And that's where dyslexia just came in and played that trick on me. Another one I have is dysgraphia. And dysgraphia loves to play tricks on me also. So how dysgraphia works is when I'm envisioning what I'm writing, I could envision really beautiful characters in my head. And when I look down on my paper, something completely different, sometimes illegible. So something from going to my head to paper, dysgraphia came in and switched up everything. And I just look at my paper, I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this? Executive functioning now acts as a big barrier to entry. And it's also a big trickster, very convincing at times. How it works is I know that I have dyslexia and dysgraphia, so writing a paper, the actual writing of the paper sometimes is very difficult. So how executive functioning comes in is like, hey, Matthew, writing that paper is very difficult because of your dyslexia and dysgraphia, so why not just do the thinking? Well, initially that's really great, and I usually do a lot of deep thought on all my papers, but the actual writing of it, that happens a lot of times far too late. So like that's a really good mindset initially, but sometimes I just need to start my paper. And with executive functioning, that part of it gets really, really difficult. So like with all those working against me, I was in a school that I didn't even know that was happening. So things were getting really convoluted, really confused, and I was just getting really lost. And I was lost, and I didn't really know why I was being lost. I didn't know if something was wrong with me or wrong with the material, or I really didn't know. So it turned into that feedback loop where I just kept performing worse and worse because of all of that, and just not even knowing that I had that going on. Fortunately, I also had a really amazing teacher in that first school I went to, because like in every other way, so what happened with me in that first school was in 4th grade, they kicked me out and told me I could not meet the rigor of that school. So I was also really, I was just like, are you kidding me? So they gave up on me in 4th grade. But the one silver lining that I had was this really amazing teacher, Yuki. He saw that I was struggling in most of my classes, but where he helped me out was he knew that I could learn the material. I just needed to learn the material in a different light. So what he did was he was teaching Japanese at the time. And Japanese was one of the courses that, on top of math, history, science, cursive typing, I also had Japanese. So Yuki knew all of this. He knew me because of after-school programs I had, and he was a teacher that truly believed in me as a student. So he saw that the textbook style of learning that was being implemented at the time was just not working for me. Me sitting with a textbook and saying, "Hidenki desu ka" 30 times in front of a mirror was just not going to work. So what he did was he showed me Japanese cartoons, Japanese game shows, Japanese music, and really immersed me into the culture and the language in a different way than the textbook. And it actually paid off a lot. And I realized at that moment, as early as in 3rd, 4th grade, that I can learn. It's just I needed to be introduced to the information in a different light. And thankfully also, after I got kicked out of my first school, I came to a second school that was for kids with learning differences. And they also believed in all of us as students that we can learn material. It just, we might need some unorthodox, untraditional ways of learning this material. So the teaching perspective and the teaching angle in the second school was completely different, and it helped us as students because we could see that also we were introduced to accommodations. So that's more of the untraditional, unorthodox ways of learning information. I know that for reading a book, an audiobook is the most amazing thing ever for me, because what an audiobook allows me to do is play into my strengths. My comprehension of material audibly is just so much better than my comprehension if I sat down and read. Not saying I can't read, it just takes me so much longer, and it's just a lot of information, a lot of content is lost in that struggle of me deciphering through. So with an audiobook, it takes away that struggle and it allows me to listen to this book, listen to this material, listen to this content, and do the task that I need to do with it, and that is re-articulate that information in class, re-articulate it on a paper, re-articulate it in many different ways. So that's the amazingness of one accommodation I learned there. Other accommodations are like writing, scribes, dictation, and there's a lot of different types of dictation. So like if you have a Mac, your standard Mac comes a lot of times with a dictation program. Extremely useful in my everyday life. I use my dictation a lot. Accommodations have also done a lot to level the learning field, because it allows me to use the things that I'm really good at to compensate for the things that I'm not so good at. I think something that really helps me is academic coaching. It sounds really big, sounds really scary and intimidating, but all it is a person that's there to keep me organized. It's someone I meet with weekly who we break down what I need to do every single day for the next week. Then I meet them next week, and we just break down what I need to do each day, who I need to email, maybe even what assignments I have looming, to just keep everything present and just to keep me on top of the things that I need to be doing. I think the most helpful thing that I could say that I've noticed is that you really just have to believe in the fact that your students can learn, and that you might have to struggle to find a really unorthodox way to teach the student, but this student can learn. And that's something that I picked up on as a very, very early age, that I had teachers who didn't believe in me at all, and that led to me not performing well in their classes. And I had teachers like Yuki who really were there, who just like were struggling with me. They're like, you're going to learn this. We're going to figure out how you're going to learn this. So like just knowing that this person's working so hard because they believe in me had this result on me to really work hard myself, because I didn't want to let that person down. I think it's very important we're having this conversation, because to this day, this conversation is still a fairly new conversation that's happening. And to this day, learning differences, learning disabilities, even that play, the discrepancy in those, what they're telling you. A learning disability sounds like something that hinders me from learning at all. A learning difference is me just learning things in a different light. So even the language around this topic is so different. One's heavily stigmatized, and the point of that is to get rights to level the learning field. The word dyslexia is so heavily stigmatized, especially when like in academically rigorous spaces like Vassar. I know a lot of people who wouldn't even want to tell their closest friends that they're dyslexic, because what that comes with is not being able to read, and being in an academic institution where you could be required to read 300 pages a night. No one wants to have that, because no one wants to have that label. So I think this conversation is one that's only been really happening over the last 30 years. This conversation is one that has a lot of progression